Buddha obviously did not invent meditation. He was born into a Hindu family as a prince, and the kind of meditation that was going on in his day was called Raja Yoga, which was one of the 8 limbs of classical Hindu yoga. However, by the time he came into maturity, yoga was getting corrupted. It's like human nature. You get a wisdom teaching, and then over time and changes and modernity and things that happen, the teachings get corrupted either by ignorance or by the desire of humans for money, power, fame, following, aversion to other things, desire to add on, and all these other things that happen. So at the time when the Buddha was a prince, the prevailing yoga was Raja Yoga, and he had decided that he didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps to be a king. His father had kept him very sheltered in the palace, provided him with everything he could possibly want. He had never seen death. He had never seen illness. He had never seen suffering. And because it was prophecy that he would leave, his father kept him basically in a bubble so that he wouldn't get tempted by the suffering that he saw to solve it. Well, he left the premises and he went out into the town, and he saw sickness and he saw old age and death and suffering, and he was very upset about it. So then he decided that he would follow some masters and learn how to meditate. And his first masters were ascetics. So he became an ascetic, and he almost died of starvation after meditating for a very long time, not achieving enlightenment. And it was then that he had this breakthrough that, these passive extremes are not the way. And that's where he devised a new iteration of meditation in Buddhism, his own philosophy, called the middle way, the middle path, not too loose, not too tight. He took his first grain of rice from a woman, which is symbolic, and then he began to practice this more balanced way of meditation. And when he finally became enlightened, after very, very intensive meditation over a period of many days, he realized that what he had discovered was too esoteric. It couldn't be explained. And he didn't have much hope for being able to teach it to anyone else, because it was almost too insubstantial, too difficult to teach. And then he was visited by various divine beings who said that he had to turn the wheel of the Dharma, he had to try. So then he went and he started to give lectures. And that's where the Buddhism that we have today comes from. And of course, it's got so many flavors through so many cultures. And Zen is basically an incarnation of Buddhism. It came from India. From India, Bodhidharma brought it to China. So in India, meditation was called jhana. That's the Sanskrit word for it. And then when Bodhidharma, who started the Kung Fu schools, brought it to China, they couldn't pronounce jhana, so they said chan. And then when it went from China to Japan, they couldn't pronounce chan, so it became Zen. So Zen is actually a translation of the Sanskrit word for meditation. That's where it comes from. So basically, the Buddha was trying to avoid traps of extremes, all kinds of traps in pursuit of liberation, of freedom, really. And so he realized that it's all about attention. Our attention is our most precious possession. It is something that is completely and wholly ours to give, to lose as we go on through life. So meditation is basically the training of one's attention. You set your intention to train your attention. And that is basically the fundamental teaching of meditation, is attention training. And that's why it's all about practice. Because if you study martial arts or do anything like that, you learn katas, and they're almost like dances, like fight dances. But the idea is you practice it over and over and over again, so that when you're in a confrontation, your mind goes walkabout, your body and the body-mind complex knows what to do because it's just been trained for that moment. And in the same way, practicing meditation over and over again, then when you get hit by a piece of bad news, by something unexpected, you're able to catch your attention before it tanks and goes into a downward spiral. And you're able to remember, oh, I'm trained for this. Let me bring it back into balance and let me proceed from a more aware, enlightened, awake, more enabled point of view. So that's the practicality of it. In meditation, it's like we're gathering our wild horses and putting them back into their stables and calming them down and sweet talking them and giving them apples and letting them know that everything is okay. Meditation actually has 3 parts to it. The first part is the concentration, the returning to focus, returning to focus, returning to focus. The Sanskrit word for that is dharani. And then once you have achieved this level of focus that doesn't get disturbed or flying off with this thought or that agitation, you've achieved this stability, then you're actually in the meditative phase, and that's called jhana, chan, zen. And when you have maintained this meditative equipoise for a certain amount of time, in a timeless state really, then you go into the deepening, the flowering of meditation, which is called samadhi. And that's where the bliss and the downloads and everything else starts to happen. And usually when you're in a samadhi, if it's a light samadhi, you may have sensations, tingling, buzzing, energetic, kundalini rising. You may start to get knowledge coming down. But when you're really, really deep, you don't even know that you've been there until you come back, and like time may have passed and you have no sense of it. It's almost like bookend with nothing in between. So this is really the goal, because that's where the magic happens, is in samadhi. Okay. We do this simply with the power of our mind. We focus our attention on a single point to the exclusion of everything else. And when we feel like that there's an agitated horse, we calm and return to focus. So it's just this constant returning of attention to the point of focus. But it takes 3 pieces. It takes the focus and concentration until the mind is steady. And then it takes the basking, the resting in that meditative equipoise, and then it's the deepening where you sort of lose your bearings and you're just in it. Those are actually the last 3 steps of the Buddha's Eightfold Path: dharana, jhana, samadhi. Focus, meditation, samadhi. So it's like we start at the end to get to the beginning, because the first one is right view, which is basically enlightenment. But you don't really get there until you've practiced. It's really hard to have that non-egoic view from emptiness until you've actually experienced emptiness on a habitual basis. How am I doing so far? In terms of the focus part, the dharana, you need to pick a focal point. In the beginning, you want to focus on something that is external to you. And you want it to be a sense object. And you want it to be a beautiful sense object, because what you focus on, you become. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. So you can focus on a candle flame, a beautiful, Buddha statue, a flower, the scent of incense. You could listen to Pachelbel's canon, something without words in it, some kind of uplifting music for your ear. You can basically use any of the senses, but what we use in Zen is our breath, because it's always there. You don't have to go anywhere special. You don't need an altar. You just sit yourself down. You put yourself into position, and it's right there. Your tool is there, and it's your breath. So what we do to move from focus to meditation is we focus on 10 breaths in and out, deep breaths, and we count them internally. 1, 2, and you try to get to 10 without losing count. If you lose count, you start over. And you have to be able to do 3 sets of that to be balanced enough to stop counting. And then you rest in that state. And the minute that something pops up, one of the horses gets agitated, something comes into your mind or your energy, you can start the counting again. You can be your own judge to determine how stable you are, but the rule of thumb is 3 counts of 10 without getting distracted. So then you have achieved meditative stability, and this is dhyana. And then from this point forward, the challenge is to see how long you can stay, like extending that resting place before you have to go back to counting. And in the beginning, it's like, I don't know, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute. And then it gets longer and longer the more you practice. So another analogy I like to make is, have you ever been scuba diving? No, you have, Paula. So in scuba diving, you know, you weight yourself, you put weights on, and you descend to a certain depth in order to get what's called neutral buoyancy. Because if you have too much air in your jacket or in your lungs or too much weight, you're either going to shoot up to the surface and get the bends, or you're going to sink down to the bottom and you're going to use all your energy trying to swim. So you need to get this neutral buoyancy going. And there is this state where you rest your knees on the bottom and you find just the right amount of breathing, just the right amount of air in your jacket where your knees touch and you don't go up, but you don't lay flat. And that is sort of like that meditative equipoise state. It's just another metaphor for the balance of meditation. When you've remained in meditation for a certain period of time, transformations start to occur in your body. I talked about sensations. You might get visions. You might get hallucinations. You might have inspiration. You might get downloads of solutions to problems. This is why I like to keep a notepad with a pen next to my cushion, because instead of like having to run off and write it down because, oh my God, I'm going to forget it, you just make yourself a little promise that it'll be there when your meditation's over. And when you finished your bow, you can go and record whatever happened so that you can have those little treasures that come up, but not be distracted while you're sitting. During the session, nothing is more precious than the cultivation of your tamed attention. And when you see those pictures of these Indian yogis in loincloths seated on these tiger rugs, the symbolism there is that they have tamed the tiger of their egoic mind. It's like they are the ones that are setting the intention, and all the horses are following and trust this charioteer. All the tigers are trusting the strength and the integrity of the enlightened mind. It's still mind, it's still egoic mind, but it's sort of a refined mind that makes one meditate. So in terms of timing, the recommendation is twice per day. If you have the flexibility, the idea is there are certain times of day when it's easier to meditate. There are conjunctions of the planet to the sun to the other celestial bodies that open up dimensions. And interestingly, the Muslims have this down. So if you were to get the Muslim Pro Timer, which I don't recommend or not recommend, I've used it, it's really interesting. They actually have their 5 times of prayer timed to specific celestial events during the day. It's not equidistant. So the best times are in the morning when the sun is rising. That's a particular dimension opening. In the evening, as the sun is setting and going into twilight. And then, if you can, just a few minutes before bed to clear your mind of all the energies and inputs of the day and to sort of lay your mental bed for a good night's sleep without all the poisonings of the day's thoughts and stuff. So if you can once again clean the slate before bed, it's really recommended to just set yourself good for the night. So that's 3 times, but 2 times is recommended. If you can do 5, it's genius what they've done with the meditation, because if you're meditating 5 times a day, it's hard to forget what you're supposed to be doing with your mind. In the meantime, if you're meditating once in the morning and once at night, so much happens in between. Your horses could go like to Mexico, and it's kind of hard to bring them back sometimes. So that's the idea between frequency. The more often is better. And in terms of length of time, when you're first starting, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, a traditional Zazen session is 30 minutes. So we're going to start with 15 today, and then we're going to work up to 30, and it's going to be 30 every time after that, because that's the classic for Zen. It's basically, we do 30 minutes meditation, 15 minutes movement, 30 minutes meditation, 15 minutes movement being Qigong, yoga, that sort of thing. If you were to go on a retreat or like an extended evening of meditation with, because we like to take what you do when you're sitting, and then we like to embody it. So it's almost like a moving meditation, sitting meditation. Okay. Also, it's easier to meditate certain times a day because we are all telepathic, and we are especially sensitive, whether we're aware of it or not, to the mind radio waves of those in our immediate geographical vicinity. The closer they are, the more we pick up on them. If you're living next door to an alcoholic or people that fight all the time, all of that energy is going to somehow be processed by your mind body, whether you have awareness of it or not. And it makes it difficult sometimes to clear that out, especially during the day when everybody's mentally active. But if you're really having trouble, try waking up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. when everybody's normally asleep, and try it then, and you'll find so much less opposition to meditation if you can stay awake. The other thing that this telepathy does is it's not just people in our geographic region, it's also people that we're attached to. Our minds are constantly going out to them. It's almost like we're pinging them, and they're pinging us back and forth all day long. You okay? You okay? I'm thinking of you, you know. So these are the things that get in the way of meditation, besides your own bodily discomforts and diet issues or whatever else might be going on. So just be aware of all the things that can impact your meditation and try to work with it if you can. It helps make for a better meditation. I talked about sensory inputs to the psyche and why you want to guard your attention like a titan guarding the gates to heaven. You know, you got to be really careful about what you let into your attention. And if, for example, if you're, I don't think you are, but like if somebody is a psychologist or a social worker, or they're in some kind of a profession where they're dealing with suffering all day long, or if they're an actor where they actually have to step into the shoes of someone who's suffering, that needs to be done very carefully and mindfully with two awarenesses: an awareness of the person and what's going on there, and then a constant touchstone to this other place of no suffering, meditative equipoise. So, because you get sucked in and those toxins become your toxins. So it's really important what the attention touches, it absorbs. So, I mean, there's all kinds of techniques for clearing and everything, but that is something that does happen. So if you're ever wondering why you feel bad or whatever, and there's no good reason in your life, it could very well have to do with those who are suffering that you love, or that you know, or that you're close to geographically. All good so far? Okay. Talked about this. Okay, in terms of expectation, it's best not to expect much from your practice, because the less you expect and the more grateful you are, the more you'll receive. This is the reason why we bow at the end of the meditation. Even if our mind was all over the place and we didn't achieve a second of meditation, it was all focus, and fail to focus, we still bow in gratitude, because we have the body and the mind and the sanctuary and the opportunity, at least, to do this. There are so many people, you know, that do not have the presence of mind, that do not have the physical freedom of body, or even a safe space to go to where they can sit and not be interrupted or attacked for 15 or 30 minutes a day. You know, the homeless shelters, all those places, very difficult to practice in such an environment. So we want to be grateful at least for our opportunity, if not for the benefits that we've received. And gratitude is the greatest equalizer, I guess, of pain. So practice is its own reward, and then there'll be benefits, but better not to focus on them. Okay. Things that come. Okay, so gratitude without attachment. Attachment is the surest way to lose the gifts of the universe. Everything passes. You want to touch the world lightly, hold on loosely, do not let go, but above all, be grateful. And over time, the benefits are that you will find yourself more centered, more disciplined, more balanced, more elusive, smarter. Like I have gotten smarter since I started doing this. Healthier, stronger. And I am not exaggerating when I'm saying that when you experience samadhi, especially if you start to experience it more regularly, it changes your structures, not just your mental structures. It actually changes your DNA. I used to have hypothyroidism. I do not have it anymore. It's considered an incurable lifelong illness. I do not have it. There are other things like that. It's been shown in science to lengthen your telomeres, which lengthens your life, which gives you an appearance of youth, not to be superficial, but these are all things that come with samadhi. It actually increases your personal magnetism, your charisma, your personal power, your ability to draw to you what you need. All these things come with the force of samadhi. Samadhi is like, it's almost like you're taking a ball of gravity and you're planting it, a tiny little like seed of gravity, and it grows. And it's almost like you begin to exert your own gravity on the environment with samadhi. So this is like true magic. So yeah, it makes structural changes, psychological. So it changes your karma, it changes your trajectory, it changes your body, it changes your mind, it changes your environment, it changes everything. But you have to have the will to do it. You have to set your intention on it, and you have to do it in order for, any of these things to start to happen, any of this magic. So a couple last notes. I, for one, I'm someone who like to neglect my body. I'd almost rather not have it. And that has been one of my biggest challenges, because if you don't befriend your body, you can't go into these sublime states of mind. The body is your vehicle. It is sacred. It is exalted. It is not impure. It is not something you need to leave behind. The body, the ego, all these things, they're to be befriended, refined, cultivated, and brought into the light. So everything is connected, and you cannot jettison any part of it if you really want to go places. And that's been my personal, my biggest challenge. I still struggle with the exercise and things like that, because I'd rather be in my mind, but the mind alone isn't going to get you anywhere. So, it'll get you somewhere, but it could get you into a loony bin. So unless you stay grounded, you might think you're enlightened, and you might actually just be bonkers, You really have to ground it in the body. So finally, to meditate, you need a clean place to sit comfortably where you will not be bothered. That's it. It could be a closet if you have to start there. Later, we'll talk about the altar and ways to make your place beckoning. And it seems like you're both kind of set up for this anyway. But I just wanted to remind you, never use not being at home or not having your altar as an excuse to not meditate, because literally you can do it anywhere as long as you're safe. So best not to be outside because of bugs, heat, interruptions, etc. when you're starting. I made the mistake of trying to teach a class outdoors at the beach once, and it happened to be a nude beach. It was hilarious. I didn't know. Boy, was that distracting. And okay, so when you're meditating, you're kind of developing your core, actually. So you're supposed to sit up without your back touching anything. In the beginning, if you're weak, your muscles are weak, you can use a support, but best not to. And the essential thing is to keep your back straight, your shoulders slightly back, your chin tucked in a little bit forward, your eyes, your gaze slightly downcast. You can meditate with your eyes open or closed. In the Zen lineage, it's eyes open. In my other lineages, it's eyes closed, so I leave it. There are benefits, obviously, to meditating with your eyes open. You learn to be present without taking in the sensory There's a real gift to that, to be able to block all sensory input with your eyes open. But I find I can go much deeper eventually with my eyes closed. So that is up to you. If you're sitting in a chair, you want your feet flat on the floor and your hands folded in your lap. If you're sitting on a cushion, you can sit Indian style. You can sit in partial, I forget the name of the pose where you're seated the Indian style. Or you can sit Japanese style with your knees folded under you. I believe Paula sits that way on a bench. Seizan, it's called. So in the beginning, when you're focusing, you want to check your posture. You want to make sure it's not wonky or whatever. But once you go into meditation, you're probably going to forget about it. If you come out, do another check-in with your posture as you do your breathing count to get back into focus. So don't worry about the posture or anything when you're meditating or when you're in samadhi, but once you come out of it and you find that you're distracted in some way, then you want to also check in with the body and fix it. Did I miss anything? Any questions? Paula? No? Okay, let's meditate. And now we bow, hands folded together and forehead to the ground. So, I'll give you a moment if you need to just breathe. So you guys are developing a sort of integrity about what it means to focus on an object of attention. It's kind of like you can cheat, but you only get what you put in. Very good. Very good. Now, do you recognize that you have established refuge?
What is that?
Well, refuge from a storm, refuge from pain, refuge. Refuge is a place where something can't touch you. So when we meditate, what we're doing is we're learning to establish our own internal refuge that nobody can take from us. And we do it exclusively through the purification of our attention, concentration to that resting place. And once you actually get to the resting place, this is refuge. So you're building refuge. Right now, it's just more like a blueprint because you haven't actually laid down the brick. But you now have a schema of what your refuge is going to be. And as you get stronger and stronger, this is really the final and only refuge. There's this whole, there's a lot of teaching around refuge, but I just wanted to introduce the word. It's not in my notes. It's one of the things that came to me when I was meditating. I'm like, I should tell them that they're establishing refuge. Refuge in the Dharma, refuge in your own self-sufficient consciousness.
I like that.
Strong. It's strong. So Any questions about anything that I've said or anything that's come up for you at all?
So I wanted to comment on what Jamie said because I experienced the same, the ability to be counting and be thinking about something else at the same time. So that being said, I'm guessing that if I'm counting and then I realize that I was thinking about something else on top of the counting, I have to start counting from one again, no? Or what would be your
That's up to
suggestion?
you. I mean, if you want to be strict about it, you can do that. If you think you can get out of it and continue and get to a place, it's your practice. It's what you need. Like, I don't start counting again because I'm able to push it out and stop it. Like, it happened to me too. In the first set of 10, like by the time I was up to 7, I realized I was reviewing what I just said to you guys. And that's where the concept of refuge came up. And then I was like, eh. And then I continued to count, and it took me like 2 sets of 3 sets of 10 to get to the place where I no longer needed to count. But I didn't start over. But you may want to, because I'm not a beginner, or I've been doing this for 25 years, so I can put my foot down once I catch myself. If you can't put your foot down when you catch yourself, then you might want to develop that muscle.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? That's okay. That's good. If you think of anything between today and tomorrow, maybe just write it down, and we can cover it. We can cover it maybe at the beginning regarding today's, and before I go into tomorrow's little lesson. And I think tomorrow we start with a 30-minute meditation. I can't remember if we do that tomorrow or the next day, but yeah, so I'll have more material prepared for you for tomorrow. I'll have the notes up like I did today. If anything comes up between now and then, let me know. And otherwise, see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much for your presence today and for your
This
practice.
is so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
Blessings. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.